Before you buy an RV, a van, or any kind of a rig, you should be able to eliminate one whole category in the first 5 minutes. If you can't, you're probably going to buy the wrong rig and regret it. This is part of my Eliminate Before You Buy series, and I assume at this point that you probably have a good idea of how you want to live, how often you want to move, what kind of lifestyle you're going to be living. But if you don't, I have done a whole video on lifestyle, and you might want to check that out. In this video, we're going to talk about cars, SUVs, minivans, Jeeps, to see if this might be a category that you want to eliminate. Okay, so let's talk about some things that are going to happen if you're living in a car, an SUV, a Jeep, or even a minivan. Well, first of all, you're not going to be able to stand up. You're going to have the limited ability of being able to move around and stretch and, walk back and forth, which is something that you can't do. You're sleeping. I'm not sure how tall are you? How much room are you going to have for your sleeping? I just heard from somebody who said that they are sleeping in their vehicle and their bed is 34 inches wide and they have a 16-pound cat. So it is, struggle with the bed. The cat gets most of the bed. It's just it's a really tight situation. So you have very limited personal space, and, you have to, how are you going to separate your living and your driving? It's not like some other vehicles where it's really more separated than it is. Let's talk bathrooms. So you're not going to have a bathroom. So you're going to be relying a lot on public restrooms and, fast food, truck stops, Walmart, whatever. But you're not always going to be able to have that ability to go to a restroom. So you're going to have to carry some kind of a little facility in order to use, when you peek up in your bucket or whatever whatever works for you. And so therefore you're going to have really limited bathroom privacy. Like if you're somewhere that there's no public restroom and it's time to go, do you have curtains that you can put? But it's going to be very limited. You're not going to have a shower, and what do you have for a water source? Are you going to actually have enough water to do, the minimal showering or bath process that you need? You're going to be relying on maybe you have a Planet Fitness membership, or you're going to have truck stops, any place that you can buy a shower. So perhaps over time, your hygiene is not going to be the best because it's going to be a little more difficult to take care of it. Cooking and food storage. So you don't have a kitchen. And so your cooking inside is going to be limited, and you're probably going to rely more on outdoor cooking. So you're going to need a camp stove. And you're not going to have a lot of place to store food. You're not going to have a pantry. So you're going to have to work that out with maybe some little containers that you get from Target, the plastic ones. You're not going to have a refrigerator, probably, although they do make those little mini ones. So you may just have a cooler and ice. I know someone who does that, cooler and ice. I always wanted to upgrade, but I've never done it yet. So cooking is probably also going to be weather related. If you're going to rely on being outside and cooking, then you can't really do that in the pouring rain or in the sleet, hail, and snow. So your cooking is going to be a little more difficult. You're not going to be able to make any 6-course meals. All right, so you're not going to have much storage at all. So things like a winter jacket and your bikini, you're going to have to carry them both, and all the associated clothes that go with each season, which is going to make it difficult because you really don't have a whole lot of room. And where are you going to put your Christmas tree and your Christmas tree lights and your jack-o'-lanterns or whatever other holiday you like to celebrate? Where are you going to put all of these things? You're not going to have room to carry your bicycle, your kayak, easily, some people have car racks on the back and kayaks on the roof, but it's not going to be as easy. And you really can't load yourself down because you're going to have some weight limit too. Once you get everything in here, that's something else you're going to have to work on. And you're going to have this constant need to reorganize all the time because you have such small spaces that things are crammed into. What if it's hot? Or what if it's cold? You're not going to have a built-in separate heat and AC for your living space. You're going to have to rely on your heat and your AC from your vehicle, which if you run that a lot, of course, that uses fuel. And so you're going to be dependent on really being able to follow the weather. I know someone who lives in a car and she has to I mean, you cannot sleep in your car at 85 degrees. Temperature outside is just too hot. You don't have double pane windows, you don't have great insulation, and you can put the things on your windows, but that's not really going to keep all the heat out. And what if it's really cold? What if it's freezing out? You're going to have to put on 100 blankets and run your heat, and that's not an ideal situation either. And you're going to need to keep your cell phone or whatever you have, your cell phone, your iPad, your computer, maybe your Starlink, all of those things you're going to need to keep charged up. Now, I know someone who has a small Jackery and actually has the solar panels to go with it to keep that charged, which is okay, except you have to be parked somewhere where you can actually put your solar panels out. You can't really do that in a Walmart parking lot effectively and have that happen. You can always plug your Jackery into your cigarette lighter and charge that up too, but you're going to be very limited on power. You're not going to be able to use your blow dryer, for instance, or your air fryer. Your power situation is going to be very limited. Is it easier to park in one of those kind of vehicles? Well, many cities now have ordinances about sleeping in your vehicle, and of course that limits all kind of rigs, but I think that for vehicle cars, it's going to be even worse because you may be confused with someone who's homeless that is not doing this on purpose and maybe asked to move along. Of course, if you're out in the boonies and you're on BLM land and Forest Service roads and those sort of places, then that's going to be okay. But you're probably not going to be able to stay in any campgrounds because they're not going to allow car campers, is what they call them. So you may have a few, it may be a little more difficult for you to find places to spend the night. And if you're finding places like that, you're not going to want to spend 2 or 3 days there. You're going to have the ability to get out away from everything else. So depending on the way you have it set up, you may have to break down everything every day if you're going to drive, depending on things like whether or not you took your front seat out, and if you have to take up your bed all the time, what do you have to move around? So it's going to maybe take a little more organizing than you would in some other kind of rigs, but you're not going to be able to leave things out. And I think that it's going to feel less like a home, and it's going to have that temporary feel to go with it. I think one of the really important things to consider too, I mean, we mentioned this before a little bit, is the weather. Because if it's raining for a week, you're going to get really claustrophobic. You're not going to be able to get out and do anything in the rain. You're not going to be able to get out and cook. Where are you going to make your coffee? You're going to be very limited. So the weather really is dependent. And I know someone who lives in their vehicle and they try so hard to follow 72, but it's a very difficult thing to do. You may have already made a decision on car, SUV, Jeep, minivan as your residence. If you haven't, then going through this list of things, if you're already to the end, that means that you're still maybe considering what you want to do about that. But it could be that you have eliminated this altogether. So you can just cross this category off from your list. But if you're still unsure, that's usually a lifestyle decision. And I did a whole video on that, and I'm going to link it below. So watch for my next video where we're going to take on the next category, because in the series there are 3.